This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.
And I think the one thing that I think has always been my mantra is control what you can control. And in the media and in the football, there's a lot of stuff you can't control, and I think you have to learn that pretty quickly, what's in my control and what's completely out of my control, and focus on the things that you can control.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. Get ready to hear moments that will help you to see the world differently and inspire you to become the happiest, healthiest, and kindest version of you. Welcome back to Things You Can't Unhear. Today we have a truly special guest joining us, Mr. Paul Roos. If you're a fan of AFL, you probably know that Paul is a legend of the game, both as a player and as a coach. He played for Fitzroy and the Sydney Swans, earning countless honours, including a spot in the Australian Football Hall of Fame, which is pretty impressive. After his playing days, he took on the role of coach and led the Sydney Swans to a historic premiership to win in 2005. He had a very innovative approach to leadership and a focus on team dynamics that have made a huge impact on the sport. Beyond his impressive football career, he's dedicated to mindfulness and meditation, culture and leadership, men's mental health and well-being, and all these wonderful things. And we jump into this deeply today in this really enjoyable conversation. He's really open, he's really honest, and he's really truly authentically him. Paul has had a lot of men around him for most of his life, on field, leading a field, coaching men, and of course raising two sons. So there has been that strong narrative of nurturing and raising boys and men throughout his life. So today we talk a lot about creating emotionally intelligent men and building men who are soft and strong at the same time. I absolutely adored this conversation with Paul Roos, and I hope you do too. Please don't forget, hit that subscribe button, give us a rating and review on the Things You Can't Unhear podcast, and we look forward to many more episodes just like this one. Welcome, Paul Roos, to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
Oh, thanks very much for having me.
Thanks for joining me all the way from Hawaii. What a beautiful place to live.
It is a beautiful place to live. It's funny when people that don't know me sort of say, oh, if I'm at the airport or I meet someone, I go, oh, where do you live or where are you from? I say, I live in Hawaii. And the reaction is always the same. It's like, oh, wow, that must be pretty cool. Because I think people that have been here love it. And people that haven't, there's this perception of Hawaii as well, sort of thing. So it's a great place. And sometimes I feel guilty at this time of year when I'm talking to my Melbourne friends and it's parka weather and hoodie and beanie, and they're looking at me through Zoom and I've got a t-shirt on and it's 26, 27, 28. Obviously it's summer here, but even in winter, winter's 24, 25. So no, it's a great place to live, and it's connects me to Australia and also connects Tammy and myself to her family in California as well.
Yeah, well, we've both done the hard yards in Melbourne, so we deserve a bit of sunshine where we can get it even in winter, right?
Definitely.
So what is the lifestyle like there? Is it pretty laid back and relaxed?
Well, there's obviously a big surfing culture because the whole island is, surrounded by water, clearly, but it's also surrounded by some of the best surf spots in the world. So I think what you notice first and foremost is people are up early, people are exercising all the time, people are down the beach, walking around with their surfboards, their paddle boards, their canoes, their stand-ups, whatever. So it's a really active environment. I think that's probably the first thing you notice. And then where we are, we're about 1.5 kilometres out of Waikiki, and then you go into Waikiki and then you've got the vibe of the tourist area, people coming in from all over parts of the world. So for me, it's really cool because if you want to stay in a quiet area, you can stay at home. But if you want a bit of excitement and, obviously we get a lot of friends coming through and people you sort of know and they contact you, duck into Waikiki, have a good night. But really, if I had to sum it up, it's a really active place to live.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like the Sunshine Coast where I live, actually. So it's pretty cool. So you moved over with Tammy, your wonderful wife, and your two boys. Did they come up with you as well?
Both of them
Come over?
moved. We've got probably similar philosophies around COVID, but both of them got out of Australia, during that ugly period of Victoria and what was happening down there. So one went to Los Angeles and one came to Hawaii with us, sort of thing. But they've since sort of both headed back to Australia. One lives at up near Kingscliff, Benora Point, which is not too far from a couple of houses from where you are, but good spot. And the other one's gone back to live in Melbourne for the time being. So yeah, so they're back, which they're enjoying at the moment. But as I think one of the things we see now with younger people, it's interesting with Dylan and Tyler, and you probably see it as well. There's so much more transient. When I played football, so I had to stay in Australia. But when I was a young kid, like living overseas was the furthest thing you would do. Even my mates went to uni, and then you go and work, and then I'd play footy and I'd work as well, sort of thing. So, but I think the world is so much smaller now. Tyler in particular has got a lot of really good friends that live in London, and they've all moved over there and they're all working over there. So yeah, it's fascinating, the different generations and what they do.
It's true. And you feel like you're apart, but you're still together because it's so tangible to be able to connect with each other. Even you and I right now doing this face to face, it feels like we're truly connecting, which is brilliant. But there have been a lot of men in your life. You've got two sons. You've played footy in teams for decades. You've led teams and coached teams, and now you're in leadership and mentoring roles. So there's always been a lot of male figures around you. And, I really want to jump into today what you think defines a good man, because I think as a father of sons or a parent of sons or anyone with, raising children in this way, we've got a responsibility to create good men and be the leader for that. So what would you think, what do you describe as a good man? What attributes do you think they need?
Yeah, it's a great question. I 100% agree. I think, having good people around. Yeah, I've certainly been really lucky in my lifetime to have good men around. And it's funny, maybe I'll go through the stages, and talk about the things I learned. Like my dad was, a hardworking guy and went to work every day and came home. We sat around the dinner table. So you learn sort of values from that, just the value of, providing for your family back in, when I was born in 1963. So you're looking at that, and then he would, he would be president of the Donvale Tennis Club and help out the footy club and all that sort of stuff. So there's this notion of giving. I think this notion of giving back to the community, being part of the community. All his male friends through the tennis club that I knew were all really similar. They were really, giving people. It was sort of almost a tribe. We would go down to Wilson's Prom. There was another family, Pascoe family, very similar to us. I've got a brother and a sister, two boys and a girl. Really, Alan Pascoe, great guy. So probably starting with that. And then when I went to Fitzroy Footy Club as a 16, 17-year-old, I was really fortunate too to have, in what was a pretty brutal environment back then, and brutal by the time, but what I say was pretty blokey, like just get shit done and just do shit and, just train hard. And I was really fortunate to have some guys that probably in that era were a little bit different. They were really caring for me as a young player. Guys like, Peter Francis and Lee Carlson, who came from Collingwood and Carlton, who were sort of older guys at the time, were really caring guys. The leaders of Fitzroy, Gary Wilson, Bernie Quinlan, Laurie Serafini, Mickey Conlon, they were a little bit older and there was no cliquey groups. And I learned to be, back then, you didn't just have to be, ruthless in the sense of training hard, playing hard, but you could be a really good person, a really caring person and help your teammates. And probably that's what I learned from there. I guess as we evolved and moved forward, I moved into coaching. It really is about building strong relationships and being authentic. And I know some of the terms that we've chucked around as leadership can be quite hard to understand. Like, what is psychological safety? What is empathy? What is emotional intelligence? So trying to break those concepts down is, I guess, part of what I do now, Performance by Design. And obviously the work I do with my son, Dylan, in the Prince the King program. We've just started the King's Table, which is a father-son group as well. But it's, I suppose if I was to describe it, is just be yourself, be a good person. Through all those things that I learnt, you can be a good person and be a good footballer. you can be a great person and be a good dad. You can have good relationships with your son, and you have good relationship with your teammates, and you can still drive really, really high standards. And I think for me, I think that's what a good man is. Someone that knows who they are, really authentic, has got good morals and values, but still holds people accountable to high standards.
I love that so much. It's great that you had role models early on in your life and in your career. I think that makes a big difference when someone just sort of breaks through the normal narrative and says, you know what, I don't care what everyone else is doing. I don't care what the definition of a good or strong man means, but this is how I am. And this is the way that I feel is right to react or be in society. I saw a video on social media the other day, and it was beautiful. Actually, it brought me to tears. It was a mum, and she had 3 sons, and she called them individually each to give her a hug. And I think the first one was sort of early teens. The second one was sort of late teens, and then the third one was probably mid-20s. And they were all hugging her in such a different way each. But then it got to the mid-20s kid, and he hung around, like he needed that hug from his mum. And it was just such a beautiful thing to witness. And we need to teach that emotional intelligence to our boys. Is that something that you always promoted within your family and in your life?
It's funny because that's probably one of the big changes, I think, people of my generation. Like my dad was a great guy, but we weren't huggers and we weren't I love yous. And, so it's an interesting generation to come from to where I am now.
Totally.
And it's something I've had to work on really, to be honest. And I think, my wife has been really important in that, to be able to do that. And ironically, my sons, Dylan in particular, working with young men, Tyler's probably a little bit more like me, is a bit less of a hugger, whereas Dylan is more like his mum sort of thing. So, but I always say one of my jobs, if you call it a job as a father, is to make sure my kids are better than I was. I think if you take that philosophy as a dad and understand you have flaws, then you can sort of say, well, I needed to do better than that. Maybe I can't turn back the past. I can't go back to being a hugger or an I love you or, and a really, an emotional family. We were a pretty stoic family and we just got stuff done and we liked each other and we loved each other. But what I do understand is my sons have got to be better than what I was, and I think that's a really important part. Otherwise we get stuck. We just get stuck in what's been done to us. Even though it might be bad at the particular time, we have to continue to evolve and move forward as a society. And that's probably the great thing I've seen in AFL football. AFL football is changed dramatically in that space, like dramatically. The relationships now that coaches build with their players is really strong. There's a real emotional connection. The emotion that comes through with some of our meetings and some of our conversations and et cetera, is really strong. So I'm proud of being part of that evolution and being through the evolution. And I was probably lucky, as you said, to have already mentors that were really caring guys that could teach me how to be caring as well. But it's sort of been an interesting journey for me and where that sort of man space is gone to.
It's sort of like it's balancing that mental toughness that men are supposed to have with a mental softness and wellness. Don't you think? It's that emotional intelligence, that roundedness. And I was having this conversation with my husband only a few days ago, actually, and he said, boys, men are different these days. They've been raised differently to be more emotionally available and intelligent and affectionate. Whereas, like you said, when you were growing up, that wasn't the norm. But it's great to see the evolution of how we are raising our men. And even in the football world, so much of that continues to happen compared to when it was in your early days when it might not have been as soft.
Yeah, and to be fair, we didn't have a lot of time back then because I was training at 5 p.m. and we had, guys with brickies and, lawyers and teachers and all that. We would come down and rush down at 4 o'clock, 4:30, to be fair to Wolsey and Parko and my first coaches. But then we went full time and, but again, AFL's really progressive. Tammy came in and did meditation with the players, and she always get asked all the time, what's it like working with a footy club? She's like, it's fantastic. The guys are really inquisitive. They really want to get better. They're really welcoming. They're really good people. And again, that's the evolution of football, to bring meditation in, and yoga and acupuncture, and all those sorts of things that most footy clubs are really mindfulness, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, the players are really receptive to it. So you can tell generationally, they're being raised differently to the way I was. And there's nothing wrong in that particular time. I had a great upbringing. Unfortunately, my parents split up when I was about 19 or 20. But in my, younger years and going to high school, I was provided for really well. They were great parents. So mum took me around and dad went to work. So that was more the traditional way things happened way back then. But it was great. We had great holidays. But we've continued to evolve. And again, that's what I keep saying to the boys is I hope you're a better father than what I am. That doesn't mean I'm a bad father. It just means that look at my strengths, look at my weaknesses, improve on my weaknesses, and take my strengths. And then if we continue to do that, we'll keep evolving.
Take all the good parts of me. I love that. So you and Tammy really were pioneers in this well-being world that you brought into football. And I love what you both did together as a team. The word meditation years ago was pretty taboo. Like, people are like, you meditate, keep that to yourself. Don't tell anyone that. That's embarrassing. Yeah. Whereas now, it's become much more mainstream, and bringing it into a football environment, I think, is so important, because there's so many variables that go on in a professional sporting career, and that toughness that you need to have, and the physical endurance and all of that stuff that goes on. But tell me about how you and Tammy incorporated this side of you into what you did.
Yeah, well, Tammy and I went and did a course. I can't remember what year it was, but it was obviously before I started coaching, and just learned. Tammy was really inquisitive about it. She's an MBA in parapsychic science, and she did a dissertation on meditation. So we went and did a course and learned how to meditate. And then once I started coaching, I realized, we'd done so much work on running and kicking and lifting weights, and the physical side of the game was really, really well covered. But above the shoulders really wasn't that well covered. And part of that is the mindfulness and meditation. So, we started. I brought Tammy in when I took over coaching. We made it optional, but it was no surprise that our better players embraced it really quickly. Brett Kirk, Adam Goods, Craig Bolton, et cetera, et cetera. They were the ones that really picked up on it, and the players loved it. And Kirky still does it. And now, as you said, it's more mainstream. Then I went to Melbourne, and by that stage I went to Melbourne. We did it. It was compulsory. We did, meditation, I think 2 times a week, and we did visualization before the game. Now, this was a really scarred football club, and I've got no doubt one of the reasons we went from being a 2-win team to a 10-win team over that period of 3 years was because of the work we did above the shoulders, because of the visualization, because of the meditation. But you're right, it was sort of, if you had brought it in 20, 25 or longer now, when I started 40 years ago, no one had really heard of it. And then there was this bizarre concept about you had to go on a cave and dress up in robes or whatever. But it has become, thankfully, more mainstream now. So it was really good. And there's no question it helped us, win the grand final in 2005, and absolutely turned the Melbourne Footy Club around, along with some other things, during that period of time as well.
Oh, brilliant. How good that you have a win at the end of that, incorporating that into your play as well. We had Anthony Koutafidis on this show probably 6 months ago, and he talked about changing the energy, and it's pretty similar to what you're talking about. If you're in a rut, or if you're not winning, or if something's not working out, change the energy of where you're sitting. And meditation and mindfulness is such a great way to do that, isn't it? It's such a great way to just shift the shit that you're sitting in.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also other things that I think we take for granted. So meditation, absolutely. So Tammy and I meditate every morning, but also just go, like what Kurt is saying is right, go for a walk in the park. Take your shoes off, go for a swim in the ocean. I think sometimes we forget the beauty around us, and the things that we like. Gratitude's really important. Be grateful. What am I grateful for today? If you're going through a tough period, there's always things you're grateful for. What am I grateful for? What's my routine? I'm going to take the dog down the park for a walk. I'm going to go down the beach. I'm going to watch a sunset. I'm going to watch a sunrise. And I think meditation is just one of those tools that you can actually re-energize yourself and change the energy. I love what Kurt is saying. Change the energy around you, change the energy within you as well. And it's really, really important. And by you changing your energy, guess who else changes their energy? People around you.
Everyone around you. That's right.
Everyone around you. And I talk about this a lot as a leader in particular. Are you giving energy to the room or are you sucking it out of the room? When you come into a meeting, oh, fantastic. Here comes Roosie. Can't wait to chat to him. Or shit, here comes Roosie. Hang on, I got to go. I got to duck off. Think about that. Are you giving energy to the room or are you taking it out of the room? It's a really interesting way to look at leadership.
That's a good point to raise, actually. So how would you define giving energy to a room?
Well, again, I think it gets back to who you are as a person. I remember I wrote down at the end of October 1998, when I finished playing, I wrote down the things I liked about my leaders and the things I didn't like about my leaders. Okay. And I've got that list still to this day. It's amazing. I wrote it in October 1998, didn't start coaching until midway through 2002. So nearly 4 years later. And that document was imperative for the success I was able to have as a coach, and obviously at Sydney and at Melbourne, because it reminded me what a player wanted. Here's another way to look at it. Look at leadership from the point of view, and this is parenting as well. Look at leadership or parenting, not what I want to give my child or the people I'm leading. What do they need from me? What do they need from me in this moment? And that's a really different way to look at things. And that's why I wrote this list down. So every time we go through a bit of a rough patch at Sydney or more so at Melbourne, I'd be able to take it out. Okay, this is what the players are going through. Okay, wow. And one of them was, you'll be getting watched all the time. Your energy will be looked at. So I remember that Monday, if we'd lost a game, it's being intentional with your actions. And I'm not suggesting that leaders, lower their standards or at times don't get emotional, but be intentional with that emotion. I'm intentionally walking in today with a spring in my step, and I'm really happy because I know everyone's looking at me. No, today I need to send a message. I'm intentionally walking into this meeting grumpy, but be intentional with whatever and understand the consequences of your actions and do it because you think that's what they need, not because I've had a fight with Tammy and I'm angry and I want to go into work and I want to move that shit from me to someone else. That's not the reason to do it. Make sure you're doing it for the right reasons.
And also going beyond that, how do you want people to feel? I talk about that a lot in my work and even people pressing play on this podcast. There's a certain way I want people to feel at the end of them listening to this. I want them to be inspired to create change in their lives where their life isn't working out, or make a small shift into something that may work better and they may end up on a different pathway. So it's that feeling around how people feel when they leave you, like you said, that is the important part. And going in as your full authentic self truly is that way to do that. It's brilliant.
There's a great quote, and I was going to use that at the end, but I won't. I'll come up with another one. And it talks about it. People don't remember what you say or what you do, but they remember how you make them feel. And that's 100% right. I can't remember what Roosie really said. I can't really, to be honest, but gee, he made me feel good. Or I can't remember what he said. He gave me a spray, but I felt terrible. You're 100% right. It's how is that person making you feel? And sometimes they feel good when you give them really, succinct advice that they need to improve on because they feel like you care about them. I talk about feedback. Feedback should always come from your heart. Okay, I'm only going to give feedback to you because I care about you and I want you to get better. So what we're saying here is sometimes we have to be harsh with people, but I hope they feel better because of that harsh feedback. That's what we're saying. We want people to feel better regardless of what we're saying to them because everyone's going to feel better. Oh, well done. Nice haircut. That's a really good shirt, Roosie, you got on or whatever. But the test is going to be, how do you make them feel when you're giving them some harsh feedback? That's a really good way to look at it as well.
And I think too, if you're prefacing it with coming from a point of wanting to help, I'm doing this to help you
Yep.
expand and go further. Yeah, that's really important. I think with being a professional sports person and playing the AFL on that level, there is so many tough times for players. So there's obviously dealing with fans and dealing with failure and dealing with, unwanted media attention and performance and injuries. There's so much pressure. How did you help your players through that when you were coaching? What were some ways that you guided them through dealing with some of these hard times?
I think understanding and having been through them, obviously first and foremost, I think,
Yeah.
particularly when I went to Melbourne, and I remember having a conversation with Nathan Jones at the time, and we were going through a really tough patch. I said, Jonesy, it's going to be okay. Don't worry. And I think you might have said something like, "We're shit, Roos." I said, "Mate, don't worry. It'll be okay. We'll get through it." And I think because of the good and bad times I had at Fitzroy, I always find it interesting when clubs look for a new coach and they always say, "We want someone to come from a successful club." I don't say the opposite, but I say they have to have been at a bad club. Because they're probably going to a bad team. Your first job is you're never really going to pick up the premiership team. And yeah, very rarely. It's happened a couple of times. But I think going through the experiences first and foremost, understanding them and putting them in context is really important, not dismissing them and say, "Oh, it's never going to happen again," or whatever, but trying to understand why they happened, what you learned from it. And I think certainly at Melbourne, I think because I'd been through some tough times at Fitzroy and then obviously the credibility of winning the premiership, I was able to talk to players on that level. I know what you're going through. Sometimes people say it and you go, "No, he doesn't. He doesn't have any idea what I'm going through. They won 4 premierships," or, he lives in a massive house in Brighton and he's got a fancy car and came from an upbringing, etc. So I think the ability to have those experiences and then to be able to have rational conversations with players about what they're going through and being prepared to have the conversation. I think that's a big thing. And people say to me a lot, "Roosie, would you coach again?" Yeah, and my answer is no for a number of reasons, but it's like having 44 kids. It really, and I say this to leaders all the time and to parents, it's not easy. If you think being a parent and being a leader is easy, you're kidding yourself. So being the coach of the Sydney Footy Club, the coach of the Melbourne Footy Club, you've got 44 kids, as well as the medical staff, the fitness staff, the assistant coaches, the player welfare, and all those things that come with it. So you have to understand you better turn up in really good shape. And I think this is one thing, and obviously we've touched on it a bit. Leaders have to look after themselves because the expectation of the people they're leading, I want you to come in really healthy and really happy and really vibrant. This notion of leaders running themselves to the ground, and this is at epidemic proportions at the moment, isn't it really? Where leaders aren't looking after themselves, running themselves into the ground, not turning up the best version of themselves. So I think also the ability to understand this, and I call it life balance. I don't call it work-life balance. Work-life balance is garbage. It's called life balance. I think understanding that life balance is really important to do both, roles really, really well. The role of the husband, the father, the coach, the brother, the sister, whatever it might be. That's really, really important. So I think those philosophies stood me in good stead. And I think the one thing that I think has always been my mantra is control what you can control. And in the media and in the football, there's a lot of stuff you can't control, and I think you have to learn that pretty quickly. What's in my control and what's completely out of my control, and focus on the things that you can control.
Yeah, the wonderful Radic Sully says control the controllables all the time. He's shared that a lot on this podcast, and it really stuck with me too. But you're full on, right, in regards to the leader having to give from a full cup, and you can't give from an empty cup. You can't be there and nurturing these 44 guys properly if you are not full yourself. And the fact that you've experienced a lot of what they've been through certainly helps. taking a quick minute to interrupt this conversation to let you know about something exciting I am growing. As you might know, I'm incredibly passionate about helping people to find and share their voice, especially if their voice is one that aims to create positive change in others. And I've launched a podcast network with purpose. It's called the Guide Your Light Network, that features podcasts and voices that inspire, educate, and transform listeners. And we have a library of podcasts that are part of our network that truly embody that mission, and we're looking for more. If this has sparked interest in you and you are ready to start exploring speaking and using your voice in this way, I'd love for you to check it out. Also, if you have something important to say and you don't know where to start to bring that to life, we can also help you to craft your authentic message through our Guide Your Light online sessions to help you get super clear on your intention, messaging, and structure needed to launch a podcast of your own that is authentically you. Just head over to guideyourlightnetwork.com. How do you keep your cup full going into these situations to make sure you are the best version of yourself?
I think it started when I first got offered the job at Sydney. We had a discussion with, and the boys were really young. They didn't really know what I was talking about. We had a family discussion. So I think when you're making a big commitment to do something, it's not just you buying in. I think it's your family or whoever you're with buying in as well. Have the discussion. This is what it's going to look like. What do you think? And the interesting thing was, when I first started, the boys were really little. Oh, Dad, we won't see you, blah, blah, blah. When I finished at Sydney, they were shattered. Dad, why are you finishing up? Why aren't you doing it? Because then through that conversation, everyone buys in. Tammy buys in, Dylan buys in, Tyler buys in, and then you can create the world that you want to create. Yeah, and that's really what we did. We created that world that I made sure, that I would meditate every morning. I would run after the players run. I would run preseason with the players. I would get into the gym and do the exercise. So I was able to, converse with them, talk to them, understand what they're doing. So building really strong relationships through that. Also, and I remember saying this, John Longmire, I might have said Dallas to Clarkson after they won the first premiership, go away. I used to go away at the end of every year. I was lucky I was married to an American that I could go out of Australia, not thinking about football, getting away from it. Too often, one of the things I hated when I heard, if we're in a workshop or I'd speak to someone is too often someone would say, I haven't been on holidays for 3 years. And they'd say it as a badge of honor. I felt like saying, you're an idiot. What do you mean? What are you trying to tell me? You're not that important. You are not that important. If you think you're that important, you're either at the wrong company or you've set up the wrong environment. Go away. Enjoy yourself. Have a break. I think the other thing is, and I talk to dads a lot about, particularly dads, because through Dylan's program, we do a lot of father-son work, but I'd say, don't wait for the big moments. If as a dad, read, and this is what I did, took every opportunity, reading a book, to kids at night, telling a story to the kids at night, going to breakfast on a Thursday morning when dropping off at Warralara. If we are waiting for that holiday, even though it's important, then we miss so many opportunities along the way to get our balance right. And I think that's probably my main message is don't miss the opportunities. And it might be a 5-minute conversation, a 10-minute conversation, ducking out for 15 minutes to watch your son or daughter run in an event down the local school. And I'll never forget this. Dylan, I was doing a podcast with Dylan and both together, and the person asked, what do you remember most about your dad? And I was like, he'll talk about the premiership and getting up and the cup when we won the premiership, because he was on the podium, as was Tyler was, or, talk about meeting Mickey O'Loughlin or Adam Goods or Barry Hall or, whatever it was. And he, what he said? He said, I remember Dad would fly home from Perth on the red eye to get to my game on a Sunday. That's what he said. It was
beautiful.
It was unbelievable. Yeah, it was really heartwarming. For me, it was just something I wanted to do. But for him, with all the things that he was able to enjoy through my time in football and all the people he was able to meet, that was the thing that he said he most remembered about me, which was quite incredible.
Oh, I bet you choked up with that one. That's so beautiful because, he wanted to be seen and heard as well. And you're obviously giving that to him. It's gorgeous. Now, you're a huge example of a player that's gone on to create ongoing success beyond playing. And I think back in your day, it was less so nurtured within clubs, correct me if I'm wrong, to nurture the players beyond football. And I think these days that's changed a lot as far as I'm aware. Can you tell us how clubs these days, or when you were coaching, nurture players beyond the game and make sure that they have continued success beyond playing?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, look, you're right, because we were, as I said before, I mean, we were sort of left to our own devices largely. We'd go to work. So my first job was at the AMP. So, for instance, pre-season, I'd have to jump up out of bed and get down to Kerford Road at 6:30, and then we'd do a run or a swim or a bike ride or whatever. Then we'd shower up and head to work. Then we come back to training in the night, and we train at sort of 5 o'clock till, gee whiz, 7:30, 8 o'clock. And I joke about this, the advent of the mobile phone, the greatest thing about that was I was working in real estate and I had one in the car, not the big suitcase one that
Oh,
they
yeah.
first. And the best part about it was ringing the pizza shop on the way home and getting the pizza and the spaghetti bolognese, because it'd be 7:30, 8 o'clock, you'd pick it up. So again, to be fair to like Robert Walls was a school teacher, David Parker was a lecturer. We just didn't have time to nurture. It was really left up to the players and the environment and your parents and, workplaces and all that sort of stuff. When it became fully professional, which coincided with my transfer to Sydney, and then when I became coach, we just had way more time and way more opportunity. Then it was about the whole person, not just a player. And I remember Richard Collis, who was the chairman of the Sydney Swans, and we used to talk about this a lot. We want people to come into the footy club and go out as better people, not just better footballers, but better people. And I think that generally is the motto with good football clubs. Yes, we want you to be a really good player, and we want you to improve as a player, but we want you to leave this organization as a better person. Now that's a more conscious thing now. It was less conscious when I was there. And as I said, I was just lucky that I had great people around me. And I believe I left Fitzroy as a way better person than when I came in. But now it's conscious, player welfare officers, sports psychologists, dietitians, obviously 4 or 5 assistant coaches, a lot of conversations with the coaches around how's your wife, how's your kids, how's your mum, how's your dad. Someone suggested to me one time, or I might have read this somewhere, the test of a good leader is how many weddings you get invited to. And that's probably a good way to look at it, because what environment have you created for your employees? And I think that was really the strength of what we created collectively at the Sydney Swans. Richard Collis, Miles Barron-Hay, Cole Seary, Andrew Ireland, myself, Johnny Longmire, Rossi Lyon, Peter Jonas, all the people, too many to name. But I think we created a really positive environment and gave players a lot of tools and armory and an opportunity to continue to grow as people.
Yeah, because there are a lot of incredible tools that you can learn as a professional sports person and on the field to take into a different career pathway when you finish playing, aren't there? I mean, there's so many like leadership skills if you're a captain, or team building skills within the team. There's almost sales skills in that as well, in terms of selling yourself and your personal brand and working together as a unified front. So there's so many things that can be pulled out and transferred over to different industries.
100%. It's a great comment. It's funny you should say that, because I say to people all the time. I have people ring me up, and often ask me, look, I've just finished playing or I've just finished coaching. What do you think? I want to get, I said, don't underestimate the skill set that you have. And now that I'm out of football for the last sort of 7 or 8 years with Performance by Design, I can see it. The concepts that you just went through, if you can understand them, the technical skills can be taught easily. You can teach someone the technical skills of, and when I say easily, I want to say that respectfully, but I mean that can be taught, IT, marketing, sales, or whatever. What's really, really difficult is the concepts that you're talking. What is teamwork? What is empathy? What is building relationships? What is playing your role? And I see it all the time. Often in a workshop, I'll go, gee, that person, they seem to really get it quickly. And I'll walk up to him, his or her, and I'll say, what have you? Oh, I used to play netball, I was a really good netball. Oh, okay, that makes sense to me now. I 100% agree with what you're saying. So don't and this is what I say, this is why the Australian system is really good. American system of junior sport is really was exclusive. Whereas if you go to a private school or everyone plays sport at school, it's such a good way to learn concepts. Every young person should be playing sport when they're growing up because you are learning. And I obviously went on and had a pretty good career, but I know some of the lessons that I learned through Nuttallwing Vikings basketball, Nuttallwing Spectres basketball, Beverly Hills Football Club, regardless of whether I went to Fitzroy, I would have taken them into the corporate world. And I did. I took them into Fitzroy anyway. It's a really good point you make. And I think for the parents out there, get your kids into sport. Don't worry. And it's hard. Don't worry about winning and losing. That's always hard, because we're all competitive by nature. But hopefully you have a good coach that's teaching them really good concepts around, what is winning, what is losing, winning with grace, losing with dignity, humility, playing your role, thanking people. All those sorts of things I think are incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it's interesting. My kids are sort of 14. One's 14, nearly 15. The other one's 12. And then they play soccer, but you look at how the groups sort of dwindle off when it gets to about 17, and there's like one team when it gets to 17, and kids start dropping off playing sport. But it is, like you're saying, it's so important to continue that because there is so much to learn within that environment, and continue also a reason to get off these damn devices that so many kids are addicted to these days as well. If it's the only thing, that's great. But yeah, you do notice that drop off significantly when they get to that age group. And it probably does have a lot to do with how much they can actually squeeze into one day. But I think, if we are nurturing that they continue on as long as possible and into adulthood, then why not?
And I think also you made a sort of subtle point there. Part of the challenge now, let's be frank, is the education system, because they're loading kids up with homework. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. We have a captive audience from 5 years of age to 18 years of age. And fundamentally, in some ways, we're wasting that opportunity to teach them about mindfulness and health and teamwork and all these things that they're going to use for the rest of their life instead of algebra. Now, that's different. You're going to be a maths teacher. So I know that. But what I'm saying is, that's the problem we've created in society. The things that become really important. I went to school, I think year 12 was in 1980. There was no such thing as homework. What was homework? Like my homework, there's no homework until year 12. But basically every single night I was either playing basketball, tennis, or football every single night. And then you learn those skills, but not only those skills, you learn how to be healthy because you're outdoors. Now, we had Pac-Man and pinball machines. We didn't have Call of Duty and all that sort of stuff they have today. But you're right, it can be dangerous. We're seeing kids now starting watching at restaurants when they're 4 years of age. Like, it's really dangerous. So I guess creating the right environment to make sure our kids are successful is really important. And I think the education system has to have a look at itself and see what role it does play in the evolution of where we're starting to get to as a society.
We're having these conversations a lot at home. And only yesterday, my eldest said, when we have our exams, they put us in this really quiet room and you can't even tap your drink bottle on the counter because it's very stressful. And if you sneeze, everyone, and it's like, this is really, and she said, the funny thing is when we do our exams in our classroom in a relaxed environment, I do so much better. But when we're in these exam rooms and it's so sterile and serious, she said, I panic and I stiffen up. And so I'm like, I think the school's trying to teach you that environment, but then why?
Yeah, because normally, when they get into the corporate world, you can duck out of your office, walk into someone else's office and say, look, I'm having trouble with this problem. Now that's not to say we don't have exams and we don't learn and we don't test kids. But again, it's a really good example of that's not normal in society. It's not normal in society to say to someone, now I want you to do this project. I want you to go into that room and I don't want you to come out for 2 hours. It just
exactly what we said.
it doesn't happen like that in real life. So we're actually teaching them a completely different skill set. Again, in context of we do need to test them and we want to become smarter and all those sorts of things. but it's a really good example.
Yeah, I think, kids getting better at questioning things a lot more as well and going, but why? But why? And I think that's important for them to do that as well. Now, I want to hear about what you are doing with Dylan, your son. You touched on it a little bit, your father and son leadership program. Tell me more about that because it sounds intriguing. And I saw your post on LinkedIn a couple of days ago as well, announcing it, which got a pretty serious raving response from everyone.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think it was about 5 years ago, and Dylan came to me, and he's always a deep thinker, and he said, "Dad, I got this idea of, running a, Prince to King program." I said, "Oh, tell me about it." He said, "Look, just mentoring young boys." And again, it was nothing against the school system, but it was basically because I remember he said to me, "Dad, I didn't learn much in school." And there's this period of time, as you know, is when the boys stop listening to their parents. So regardless of how good a parent you are, I went through it as well. I coached Dylan in footy. Do you reckon he knew? He said, "Dad, you don't know anything about footy." I said, "Oh, well, I think I played a little bit." But so there is this period where as we need mentors, and we need. I don't care if you're the best parent. And Tammy and I are great parents, and a lot of the parents in the system are great parents. That's why they're in the system. And I said, "Mate, I think you're onto something here. I think that's a really good idea, mentoring. You can talk to them about girls and setting really good habits and how do you avoid bad habits and bad crowds and all that." So he put together a system, and I've helped him with that system around leadership and jumping on calls with the parents and the boys. And so I've been doing that. And then, there's been so much interest, around that father-son relationship, and how we can improve that. So we did something called the Brotherhood, where we had about 6 dads and 6 sons come in, and we went through a 6-week program, and that was really well accepted. So, we've come up with this thing called the King's Table, and really it's just a 12-month program trying to, pass on my experience, Dylan's experience, what is leadership, what does it mean? Because all this stuff is translatable, whether it's football, work, or parenting. It all comes back a lot to the same things. But again, I just love it because I like to share my experiences. I've been really fortunate to be, great parents, great environment, great footy club, seen the ups and downs of players. And then I worked for Swans Academy, which was 12 to 18-year-old boys, and then had 2 boys of my own. So really, I'm just trying to I talk about putting old head on young shoulders when I'm working with the boys. And then a lot of it for the dads is some of the concepts we spoke about. The brotherhood, dads were really fascinated about what is empathy. Oh, what is personal brand? What are you talking about? So we had some really good discussions. So we've decided to, put together this online program, which will have some really good content. And look, hopefully we can make a difference and, help people. And again, just taking my experience and Dylan's experience, and, it's awesome. And I just love it.
Oh, what an incredible platform that you've created. I think it's super important. I'll actually put links in the show notes for anyone who wants to follow on that journey and delve into that a bit deeper if you've been
That'd be
intrigued
awesome.
on what you said now. Now, you said you meditate every morning. What type of meditation do you do specifically? Do you have a particular style? Are you a silent meditator? Do you listen to a guided meditation? Are you transcendent? What is it that you do and how do you do it?
Mainly guided and silent, So I think the main thing that I've learned about meditation, just even if you're sitting up and breathing, like obviously do a course and learn and all the mechanics behind it. But yeah, just try it. Just sit up in bed, close your eyes, breathe nice and slowly, listen to your breath, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Don't worry too much about it. Give yourself a routine. But for us, Tammy and I do the silent meditation, but we also do a lot of guided meditations as well, sort of thing. So, it's a non-negotiable for me now, and it's part of my routine and just part of what I do.
That's great. Where did you meet Tammy?
I met Tammy. I was in Hawaii, ironically, on a football trip with Fitzroy, but it wasn't on the footy trip. Myself and a mate of mine, Brett Stevens, we travelled to Los Angeles, then we went Los Angeles, Las Vegas, then we went to San Diego. And we went to a place called the Old Ox Tavern in Pacific Beach. And it's a funny story, actually, because it was in the days, again, I'm 60, so it was in the days when in Melbourne, to go to a nightclub, you had to wear a collared shirt and business pants and black, dress shoes. So I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. So we, 2, nerds from Australia, walked into a surfy bar in Pacific Beach with collared shirt, business, slacks on and black, business shoes, and everyone else has got T-shirts and shorts.
Stuck out like a sore thumb.
Stuck out like a sore thumb. And my mate's a lunatic anyway, so we were always going to stand out like a sore thumb. And then Tammy was sitting on the seat at the time she played soccer for San Diego State. So I just walked over and said hello. And ironically, her graduation present was a trip to Australia. So that's what her mum, and graduation presents are big in America, when you graduate from college. So basically said, look, if you come to Australia, look us up, we'll take you around, et cetera, et cetera. So that was sort of October. And then she came the following year in about March. We took them a couple of footy games, and then Brett and I went back and stayed with her family at the end of 89. So that's when it sort of started. We got married in 1992. So yeah, it was a fortuitous meeting in a nice surfing bar at Pacific Beach.
I love that. You were playing at the time? You were professionally playing?
Yeah, so we just finished the season. I was playing with Fitzroy, and we'd finished the season. We were just traveling at the end of the year.
And you were pretty well known in Australia back then, and Melbourne specifically. But did she have any idea who you were?
Well, there's a bit more to the story than I told. So
there always is.
There always is. So because I sort of summed up the situation pretty quickly. I'm in San Diego. I'm near the beach. I'm in a surfy bar. And she said, oh, what do you do? I said, I'm a surfer. And she's like, well, have you been to the beach? I said, no, I haven't been to the beach. And that was sort of dead giveaway that I wasn't a surfer. So she didn't believe that I was a surfer. And then I said, oh, I'm Australian rules football. She goes, there's no such thing as Australian rules football. So I couldn't convince her of that either. But the day she landed in Australia was the merger of Fitzroy and the Bulldogs. And I was on the front page of the paper with the jumper. So she must have got off the plane and looked at the paper, and then looked at this guy that she was talking to in a bar in Pacific Beach, and she wanted to contact when she came to Australia. And I was on the front page of the Herald Sun because of the merger that was potentially going to take place between the Bulldogs and Fitzroy. So that's
going to extreme measures to prove to her that you're an AFL player.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. So how does Paul Roos like to have fun? How do you like to enjoy life?
Oh, family. I'm a big family person and big travel. I've got a grandson now, Rainer. Just love hanging out with him. Such a cool little fella.
Another boy.
Yeah, another boy. Yeah, it's crazy, eh?
Yeah.
And love traveling. Just love spending time with my family, and you can't beat living in Hawaii. So, that's my main passion is my family and traveling. And spending time with the people I really enjoy.
What country's on your bucket list?
Well, we're heading to Croatia in August, so we're doing a Dubrovnik split. We're going to Mallorca, San Sebastian as well, London, Lisbon. So we've got a nice trip planned, and something really cool, good and bad. Like Tammy's dad passed away last November, which is really sad. And Tammy's mum's coming with us, so that's pretty special with Dylan and Tyler and their partners and Rainer, and so it'll be pretty special. Sad for Bill not being around, but it's great for Tammy's mum to spend some time with us and see some new places and hang out. So the good and the bad, I guess.
Yeah, merging all your loves, traveling and family. That's awesome. All right, I just want to end this beautiful conversation with one last question. And I warned you about this one, and you already gave me an answer, but you can think of another one surely in this extensive, wonderful life of yours. What is something that you once heard that you really could not unhear?
Yeah, I heard this fable, and it was about a young kid, a grandson, and he said to his grandfather, he said, "Granddad, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up." And the wise old granddad looked down and said, "Grandson, just be a good person. There's plenty of vacancies." And it really hits home in today's society and the challenge we've had over the last 3 to 5 years, and all the concerns that we all have about the future and so forth. So I just felt, if we can all be better people, a rising tide lifts all boats. If we're all better people, we'll all help each other, and society will turn around relatively quickly.
Beautiful note to end on. Thank you, Paul Roos, for joining me on the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
No, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.